Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the final installment of Masters of the Fly for this season. Lou, it's been an amazing season with
Yeah.
all of our guests.
Yes, indeed. And thank you all for being here, and thanks for all of the participation and support in these sessions. For those of you who've attended before, you all know about Masters of the Fly. For those who are new, David and I really started this in the middle of the pandemic because we were just desperate for company among fellow fly anglers and conversation and connection. And everyone responded with such enthusiasm that we are continuing to do it. We have a full season, jam-packed season planned for next off season, so please stay tuned on all of that. We also have a bunch of content that we'll be developing over the next during the fishing season. In particular, for those of you who've seen some of the stuff we've done on YouTube, going out and fishing some of the flies that we tied together this off season, and hopefully getting some of these folks who've been our guests this season out on the skiff or out on the boat with us, so we can record some great fishing and share it with all of you.
Lou,
So stay tuned for that,
Lou, can I share one of the guests we may have next season?
please.
We may have Andy Mill. So Andy and I have talked, and he said he would love to be on the show. So we're counting on him to show up sometime in January.
Yeah, so we have a great lineup. That's a good tease. I'm wearing my Andy Mill, my apolitical shirt for today. For those of you who don't know Andy, he is the genius. He and his son Nick are the geniuses behind the Millhouse podcast, but also featured in one of our previous guests, Jamie Howard's famous film Chasing Silver, which is perhaps the greatest fly fishing film ever made. So excited for that. Thanks, David, for the tease.
You got it. And not to downplay what we've already done this year, but considering we had the American Saltwater Guides Association, Bob Popovics and Johnny King, Chris Wood from Trout Unlimited, Jason Taylor, United Women, we had women leaders in fly fishing, James Prosek. I mean, we're starting to crank out some really good content. We hope everyone continues to tune in to us for our next season.
Yeah. So Clay, actually, if you put the logo screen up for all of you who, most of you I know follow us on these channels, but for those of you who don't, email us anytime at mastersofthefly@gmail.com. We're on YouTube as Masters of the Fly. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Please subscribe, follow, like us on all those channels. We'll be sure to get great content out to you, and let us know what you think. We do this for free. We do this as a passion project. We do this for you. So give us the feedback, positive or negative. Let us know how we're doing and what we can do better. So again, thank you all for being here. And finally, just a huge thank you to the people who have made this possible these last two seasons. Tom Kaczynski, who you can see in the ad with the Aska hat on, has just been a driving force behind everything that we do. Eric Schatzker, who's not here today,
Unfortunately,
our normal moderator. He's on a far-flung trip right now. Clay Andrews, who's off screen right now, who does a lot of the social media support and technical support, and is a terrific angler as well. So thanks to all of you and all our guests.
and
So,
Lou, I want to personally thank you because, boy,
well, well, you're welcome.
web design and all that, and also, you just showed our logo. You too can have this logo. All you have to do is write us at Masters of the Fly. We'll send you your own personal one. You can stick it on your water bottle and show your colors to all your buds. So yeah, I got mine in my water bottle. And
Nice.
yes, Lou,
I have mine on my truck, David.
yeah, I'm gonna put it on my boat. There's a couple of other people I want to thank before Lou we get going. I want to thank Dunn Magazine. I want to thank United Women on the Fly, and I want to thank Trout Unlimited. You guys have really stood by us this year and helped out a lot. So thank you very much. Lou, is anyone else who stands out?
Tons of folks, our friends from
I
the
know.
American Saltwater Guides Association, the Saltwater Edge folks, Peter Jenkins,
Thanks, Jenks.
uh, Tail Magazine. Too many to mention. Jamie Howard and Howard Films, obviously. James Prezek, all of our previous guests. So thanks to everyone who's helped get the word out. We respect you, and we'll put you on our boats any day of the week you want to
That's
go
right.
out.
Yeah,
So with that
you want to go in a
said,
CV or you want to go in an East Cape Evo? Lou and I've got
we
the
got the
boat.
fleet ready.
Yeah.
With that said, and mentioning the American Saltwater Guides Association, I wanted to turn it over quickly to Tom. I know we've been talking a lot about this year's all-important ASMFC Amendment 7 to the Striped Bass Management Program. Tom, can you give the crew a little bit of an update on where we are? Because we're at a really important point right now.
Yeah, and thanks, Lou. So thanks for doing a great job, everyone, of getting your letters in. I think there were almost 5,000 comments.
Wow.
And Charlie Whittick had a breakdown the other day, and like 99% of them were pro-conservation. So our voice is certainly heard, and we're going to hope that the SMSC listens and takes action on Wednesday. If you wanted to tune into the meeting on Wednesday, it's 11 to 5. I'm going to put a link in the chat. And immediately following the meeting, Tony and Willie and John are going to break it down, probably on the Guidepost podcast from ASGA, and they'll also have a blog up soon. So I'll put the link in the chat if you want to listen. But great job, everyone. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
Yeah. If you didn't write, please attend either virtually or in person, please.
Cool. All right. We got a lot of content to cover here, so let's get right into it. David, let's do a quick intro of our guests tonight, and then we're going to throw it over to them anyway to do a deeper intro of each of them themselves.
And just before I do the intro, everybody, if you've got questions to ask the guides or our moderator, Lou, go to the Q&A. Don't go to the chat room, but the Q&A on your lower right. That is where we'll be able to pull up the questions and answer you. So we've got Gene Quigley, Abbie Schuster, Merritt White. Boy, you guys, that if there wasn't a grand slam of guides on tonight, I don't know what is. But Gene's been out there 24 years guiding in New Jersey. It's been amazing, and this is going to be really quick. Gene from Striped Bass to Tuna, he's your guy. Abbie Schuster, if you go to Martha's Vineyard, that's the only guide you want to go, or it's the only shop you want to get guided out of is Kismet right there on Iggertown Road. Merritt White, I don't know what I can say. Merritt and I have been friends for gosh knows how long. If I wasn't a guide and I was in the Hamptons, Merritt is the guy who I want pushing me around without question. He is one of the best shallow water guides there is. And then there's me, and you guys have known me for a long time, and I'm guiding out there. Merritt and I share the waters. So and we talk to each other pretty much every single day, so we know what's going on out there. So Lou.
Cool. Thank you, David. Thank you. All right. So let's start this conversation by kind of following the migration of the fish up the coast. And Gene, I'm going to start with you because you're our southernmost guide guest on this show. Tell our audience a little bit about your background, how you got into this game and became a professional guide. Maybe a little bit about, because I know you run more than one boat, so also like how your business works, how your guiding service works, and a little bit about your fishery, so folks know who aren't familiar with it know what it fishes like.
Sure, absolutely. So born and raised right on the Jersey Shore in a little small town called Seagirt. I live in Point Pleasant Beach now. Just growing up as a kid, my entire life, I was, a waterman, surfer, boater, sailor, diver, fisherman. Just kind of lived the lifestyle and really got into it, but just always had this deep passion for fishing and whether it be out on boats or in the surf or in some of the back bays. It's just something that I migrated to as a kid, and actually got a job. My uncle was a charter boat captain and used to run canyon trips. And so as soon as I could get on the boat, I was working as a mate. It was doing a lot of offshore fishing and really have always had a passion for that. But I really started fly fishing kind of my late teens, early 20s. New Jersey has got this deep influence of saltwater fly fishing. We live under kind of the umbrella of Bob Popovics, who's a mentor to all of us, and the history here with the Atlantic Saltwater Fly Rodders, which was the very first saltwater fly fishing club, I think, in the country. Something I got involved in at an early age, and started fly fishing in the surf. And people where I am, they kind of look at you weird, like, what are you doing? That's like a freshwater fly rod. You're never going to catch anything. Surf fishermen here are pretty hardcore dudes. So my partner and I, a guy by the name of Jim Frieda, before we started Shore Catch Guide Service, we would just go fly fish the surf, and we had some success, and we were learning from Bobby every day. And we started bringing rods down because people wanted to do it and wanted to try it. And so we kept bringing extra rods down and borrowing gear. And my partner Jimmy's like, hey, we should start a guide service, like legitimately start a guide service from the beach, because there was no saltwater fly fishing guiding in the state of New Jersey at the time. And so that evolved, and 24 years later, we've got 6 boats and we've got trucks on the beach, and it's just a super passion for us, and we all love it. Me in particular, I have a tendency to specialize in, I do a lot of striped bass fishing, but my real passion is offshore, and fly fishing for bluefin tuna, yellowfin tuna, mahi, marlin, anything that swims out in blue water. I really enjoy doing. Right now we're striped bass fishing in Raritan Bay, and we've got I think Jersey is really underrated as far as like the class of fish we get. I mean, the last 15 years since they passed the bunker bill, it's not unusual to have 40, 50 pound bass on the fly here. I had a client a couple of years ago that landed 3 over 45 pounds. I think it was 44, 46, and 48 all in one afternoon. So it's a world-class fishery. It's a really cool fishery. And what's really nice about our fishery, it's a long fishery. So, we start April 1st and we don't stop until like Christmas or a little after Christmas. So we get a long time to guide. I mean, obviously we have to deal with storms and things like that in the fall, but it's a super cool fishery. And there's just a lot of options. We fish for blues, we fish for weak fish, whatever we can.
That's awesome, Gene. And speaking of the long fishery, so are you sort of focusing on striped bass in the first third of the season, and then you're more offshore focused, and then you're focused on the bass as they come back down the coastline?
Exactly. So April and May is just pretty much all striped bass. I mean, we'll start looking for bluefins in mid-May, and then we're offshore all summer. The waters just get too warm. You can catch striped bass here. There's residents, but not that big migrational push. And then again, in October, November, December, that's like primetime fall blitzes, great fishing for us here. And so that's kind of the pattern we follow.
Cool. That's great, Gene. So let's go up the coastline here, and I'm going to throw it over to David and Merritt. Love to just get you to talk, each of you, about how you got into this, what your background is, and where you fish, and how you fish, and what your fishery looks like.
Merritt.
Yeah. So I grew up in Bridgehampton. My folks in Southampton. I had the blessing. My grandmother has a beautiful, a house on a beautiful glacial kettle hole pond, which Dave, you've been out a little bit with me. And so I kind of grew up more freshwater fishing for bass and, panfish, pickerel, that kind of thing. We also have a nice little estuary behind the house too, not too far away. And, growing up in little Boston whalers and little tiller control, little wooden dories and that kind of thing, that was sort of my background, crabbing, scalloping, all that good stuff. And we would catch whatever fish, we would catch that would be swimming back there, little cocktail bluefish, whatever stripers were around. But a lot of freshwater in my, younger years. And Of course, we kind of grew up. I'm 54 years old. In the late 70s, early 80s, where there weren't really a lot of stripers around, back then. You could catch them, but they weren't anywhere near as prodigious as they were in the late 80s, early 90s, and so forth. So anyway, mostly freshwater and spin fishing. I didn't get the fly fishing bug until I started ski bumming out west after college. I spent several years in both Utah and the last 20 or so in Colorado. So the fly fishing bug came to me via trout fishing out west in those years after college. And then probably the one person responsible for me getting into the saltwater fly fishing universe was a good friend and a college buddy, Scott Gakel, who some of Gene probably, and David. Actually, Scott Gakel was Paul Dixon's first hire. And so he worked for Paul for 2-3 years and decided to strike out on his own, guiding service. And so they pulled me into the shop to help, kind of run the retail end of things and to book trips for Paul, for Scott. Back then, we were booking trips for James Kang, Wally Johnson, Ernie French, Barry Canavy a little bit. And so that's how I sort of got entree into the the fly fishing, the saltwater fly fishing universe. And, obviously fell in love with it, very passionate about it. I took one of our little Boston whalers and turned it into a flat skiff and started following David around a little bit. And actually, my guiding started in Key West of all places. I joined a couple guys from Montauk, Mike McCarthy and Jason Behan, and we started up a little kayak fishing business down in Key West. And we were a little ahead of the curve back then as far as the kayak fishing thing goes. We're successful at it, had a blast doing it. The business itself wasn't so successful, but I kind of hung on there for a while. I bought a little more of a legitimate skiff and basically, supported myself doing construction for a while, and just did whatever flat strips I could do, and brought that back to the the east end of Long Island, and that was sort of the beginning of the my business in that regard. So.
And
Wow.
and Merritt, when are you generally when are you in the water? I know you just made it out here from the winter in Colorado, but when does your season begin, and when are you off the water generally?
Yeah, so I'm not fishing down in Key West anymore. I haven't done that for a number of years. So basically, I get home the end of April and start up the beginning of May. Just do a lot of scouting, try to find whatever fish I can scrounge. Usually, the last few years, the bluefish runs have been actually pretty good with this sort of paucity of stripers, at the moment. Some holdover fish around, some residential fish. Obviously, we do a bunch of fishing for them too. But honestly, the bluefish have been really the saving grace for the better part of May for me. And obviously, once the flats fishing is done, say for me, late July, I have the two boats, and I fish primarily out of Montauk during the heat of the summer through the fall. So bluefish, of course, and then obviously, I mean, my biggest passion in the spring and the summer is the flats fishing, and when it's good, I'm there, for sure. So.
Yeah, got it. David, how about you?
Well, yeah. Let me just address, I saw a question come up a minute ago, and I just want to address that. I'm speaking very passionately about the group of guides who are with us tonight, and it's no disrespect to other guides in other parts of the world, like Martha's Vineyard or the Hamptons or Florida or wherever. So I can't remember who asked the question, but I'm speaking passionately about this particular group tonight. These are people who I know and respect and love. There's a lot of other great guides out there. So if you feel like I was being disrespectful to other guides, not in the least. We're talking about our group tonight. So for me, I mean, I came to this pretty early on. I had a fly rod in my hand at age 6 in a backyard pond where my parents lived. And, you know, I kind of cut my teeth on bluegill and largemouth. And then just cut to a bunch of years later, my grandparents lived, funny enough, on Martha's Vineyard. So my first, my passion really got fueled on Martha's Vineyard. In all places at the dock at Menemsha, at a little place that we all affectionately call Squid Row. And of course, you know, you go to college and you get an office job, and you know, you keep looking out the window thinking, well, there's got to be a better way. And the better way for me was choosing a lifestyle as opposed to a vocation. And my choice was to get out from the office and to guide fly fishing. My first passion I can remember at age 6, and it'll be my last passion when I'm long gone. And I started guiding in the Hamptons about 27, 28 years ago. And it's sort of been a long haul. I got very lucky. We had good fish. I was lucky enough to meet Merritt when he was working for Paul Dixon, and we became fast friends. And I think having a good network of people around you, you know, is very, very helpful. People who you trust and you respect, because it just makes everybody better. That's all I have to say. But you know, guiding saltwater fly fishing is incredibly fun. I mean, I love trout fishing, and you can find me on the rivers of Idaho and Colorado and New York State. But if somebody said, well, I'm going to take a group of fly rods away from you and just let you have one, I'm keeping my 8 through 12. I can tell you that right now. So that's really truly what I love. And you know, it's just gotten, you know, my business. I love it dearly. And getting to meet all these wonderful people who are here tonight. And Lou and I became friends a number of years ago, and we were lucky enough, I guess, if you talk about it, lucky enough because of the pandemic to start this wonderful forum for everybody and bring other people in. So there it is.
And David, I know both you and Merritt are, you know, you love the flats out here, out east. David, I know, you know, you in particular, you're out on the flats later in the season than many guides are.
Yeah.
Is that like most folks are following fish moving out of the flats into the open water? How late are you fishing the flats out here out east?
You know, it's really interesting. Kind of the 3rd week of August, they vanish from the flats. It's like I could be fishing on the 19th and on the 20th, I won't find a fish and they're just gone and I have to do other things. And then sometime around mid-September, they start trickling back in. And last year, I was fishing shallow water the end of October, beginning of November, going into a couple of the creeks. I remember calling Merritt up saying, you know, kind of jazzed. I had actually taken my daughter fishing for 3 hours one day. We had a storm, and Merritt and I both canceled. And then the wind just dropped around 1, 2 in the afternoon. And I just jumped in the skiff, and boy, there were just fish everywhere. And, you know, I mean, I'd been fishing them, but the numbers were pretty incredible.
Because that's usually a time of year out on the east end of Long Island that people are thinking about bass boils and albies and stuff like that. But you're saying you're still focused on the flats at that point in time.
I can't be. And what I think's happening is the resident fish have joined the migration, but then they decide, well, it's time to go back to my winter home and hang out and just eat what's in the estuaries and creeks and stuff like that. So I think that's what they do. It's not big fish, but then, you know, you can still have quite a good day. You know,
great. Yeah. So you made a mention of your time in Martha's Vineyard and Menemsha and Squid Row. So that brings us to Abbie. And obviously, Abby, you fish in, I mean, as legendary a saltwater fishery as there is up and down the Atlantic coast. How did you get into this business, and when did you start, and what do you do? What does your season look like?
So was lucky enough to start as a baby. Really, my dad is a psycho fly fisherman and taught us, my siblings and I, when we were little, and didn't really know anything different, honestly. I grew up in Connecticut, so I fished the Farmington River a bunch. We were super close to that, but my grandmother lived out in the vineyard, so we were here all the time, like fishing and stuff. My first striper I ever caught was at Jaws Bridge, if you're familiar with the vineyard. I was little and used to fish off like my dad's shoulder. Like I was tiny. It was so fun. So dangerous, actually. Some of the like I think back and I'm like, the amount of times I've swam to shore, like in the dark, fire rod, is, now that I am a mother, I'm like, that's horrifying. But whatever, we survived. So I grew up fly fishing out here, and this I can definitely consider my home waters. And then I went to University of Vermont for 2 years, and I went out for a week, or a year and a half, I should say. And I went out to Montana for a weekend, and it was like, it was my first time ever out west. And I was like, this is the most magical place I've ever been. So I transferred the next semester. My parents were like, you're doing what? Like, you went to Montana. All my friends were like, you're what? You were what? I mean, it was crazy, but it was great. So I went to Montana and I realized that people can make a living guiding, which was such a foreign thing. I didn't know anything about it. So I went to guide school, started guiding in college, and really put all my eggs in one basket with this one. Thank God it's worked out. And it's been guiding ever since. And have guided in Washington, Alaska, Montana. And then in 2016, I started my own business, Kismet Outfitters, named Kismet because it means meant to be. And this is something I've wanted to do my whole life. And so I started my own business and I opened a fly shop in 2020. Another impeccable timing, but thank God it's worked out. And now, full service guide and fly shop. I have 2 other guides. We run 2 different boats. We do shore trips, and I just love it so much. I'm so happy that this is my life. It's pretty awesome.
When does your season begin and when do you end?
It's starting so soon. I can't believe it. This fish are just starting to show up, but I won't take trips till like mid-May. Unless it's clients that are like, I know and want to go out, and it's okay if we don't catch fish, in the next couple of weeks. But mid-May is when the fish start running. And we end of October. And I'll have some fish trickle in and some clients trickle in like the beginning of November some years for the albies if they stay around, but that's depend.
And are you fishing, what percentage of the time are you fishing flats versus open water, or does it really vary by season?
It varies. So May, June, and then the fall, we do a ton of flats fishing. I also do a ton of full day trips then. So we'll fish like the rips in the morning because we have amazing squid migrations and the rips are just so productive. And then when the sun is a little bit higher, we'll head to the flats. July and August, the flats get a little bit too warm. So we kind of just stick to, I don't go off far. I only run a 23-foot boat. So, 3 miles most, really. You don't really need to go farther. And then back in the fall, the big fish will come in the flats, and that's so fun.
Are you doing any, do you do any offshore pelagic fishing?
I don't on my boat with clients. I do with friends and family because it's just single engine, and it's like, bummer if it breaks down. But, thanks. Not a great tip that day. But I'll go off clients' boats. We go off.
Gotcha.
Which is so fun. And I don't do it a ton. Maybe a handful of trips a year, but it's the only place that, and I think this is what I was attracted to me to Montana so much, like that you feel like the most free because you're like, in this huge, expansive, open space. And then Montana was kind of the same with, but not water, obviously land. It's just such a freeing
I
feeling.
never made that comparison. That's great. I love that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful. Yeah, lucky.
So let's flip back around to the south side of things and back to Captain Quigley here. So, Gene, so first of all, what is your sort of southern northern range where in terms of your fishery? How far south down the Jersey Shore do you fish, and how far east do you fish?
So in when we're inshore, like now and in the fall, it's pretty much from like, New York Harbor, east end of, not east end, west end of New York, Rockaway, Long Beach, down to about Barnegan Inlet. I come out of Manasquan Inlet mainly, and that's right smack in the middle. In the early spring, right now we're all up in Raritan Bay though. And then offshore, I mean, we run the canyons from the south end of the Wilmington down off of Maryland, all the way up to the dip and points north off the east end of Long Island. But generally we're usually in the area of the Hudson Canyon, inside the Hudson Canyon on like the 30 and 40 fathom line. That's where most of our tunas have been for the last 5 or 6 years.
And so for folks who haven't done that before, if you're coming out of Manasquan Inlet, how long a run is that if you're going to head to the canyon?
Depends on the boat you have. So I run a 36 yellowfin, triple 300s, and also a 41 Viking Valhalla, which has triple 425. So they move. They're pretty quick. You can get to the grounds, on a decent day in, about an hour, out 50, 60 miles, no problem. When it gets rough, we pull it back a bit. And sometimes, like last year, we had a run of bluefin that were 12, 13 miles off the beach, that were great fly rod fish. And then we also had a run of giant bluefin, which obviously we're not targeting the giants on fly tackle, but they were right in New York Harbor, right outside of New York Harbor last summer. Pretty amazing fishery we had.
So talk about, I cut my eye teeth fishing around those parts of the woods. I'm a New York City kid, so I used to run my boat out of Jamaica Bay and I fished all around there a ton.
Yeah.
And there were some lean years. I'm just curious to hear. I mean, you talked about the bunker, obviously, and what we're seeing. I mean, Raritan Bay the last few years has just been pretty incredible in terms of an early season fishery. Talk a little bit about what you've seen, in the quarter century you've been fishing this. How has it changed? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Did it get worse and then better? What's happening, and what do you think is causing the change in the fishery in your area?
No, it's a great question. I mean, it's so Merritt mentioned earlier about how, in the 80s there was just no fish, no striped bass around. And I remember that time when, all we did was go catch bluefish and weakfish. And if you caught a striped bass, it was just kind of like a unique situation. Guys would fish at night, hardcore striper guys, and they'd catch them. But it wasn't until, they passed the bunker bill, I think it was 2003, that changed everything. Because what would happen is the spotter planes, the boats would come up and they would be inside of 3 miles. And as soon as the bunker would show up in masses, they would get decimated. And so the bass really just passed us by, the really big fish. And that changed everything. And in the mid to kind of 2005 to like 2015, just insanity with bass blitzes, big fish, bunker, not just in the bay in Raritan Bay, but also out in the ocean. And, so I've seen it come up, and now I'm kind of seeing it decline a little bit as well, too. I mean, that mass of fish has just been hit so hard every year. And right now, Raritan Bay is phenomenal, right? But it's a small little area in the overall scheme of things. So while it's world class, down the beach, there's not a lot of fish. Down in Barnegan Bay, there's not a lot of fish or schoolies. But in Raritan, because it's a, it's a nursery, they're going up the Hudson River. That fish is still, that fishery is still very, very healthy.
And those Raritan fish, it's interesting because I was talking to Tom, who can weigh in on this too. Like, we were noting that oftentimes you find that those early season big fish actually don't have any lice on them. And then, then you get them and they're a little bit in the more of the open water, or, you just get the smaller fish have lice on them, and then you get them in the open, in the ambush channel, stuff like that, right around now, and those fish have lice on them. What is that stock of big fish, breeding fish that's in the Raritan early in the season? Are they holding over, do you think? What's your theory about what's going on there? Or are they just migrating slowly up the coastline like every other fish?
I think you see there's tremendous amount of holdover fish where we are, tremendous. They go all the way up the Raritan, up into the freshwater. They go into some other rivers in New Jersey, which if I mentioned, Tom would probably kill me. But, up around the Hudson and other areas. And those fish will get up in the 20, 25 pound class. But the really big fish, they come in from offshore. They're the ones that are coming in on the moon phases, that are coming in to feed on the bunker, and also coming up to go up the Hudson to spawn. And those are the ones that are coming in 35, 40 pound plus, in from the deep water and from the south, from where they're wintering over and then coming up the bay.
And Tom, is that what your experience is too? Is that what you're finding? You're finding a mix of different fish, and you can tell by the size where they're coming from or what stocks they're from?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, last year we had more bigger fish early.
Definitely.
I think we had fish over 30 the last week of March. This year there's not been that many of them, but I think a lot of them might just stick out in the canyons, and then as Gene said, they use those moon tides to move in, so it could be one tide cycle and they're moving in. We're just coming off the new moon now, and I wouldn't be surprised if a couple 40 plus are caught in the next few days.
Yeah, and I remember, Gene, I heard you speak at the New Jersey Somerset fly fishing show one year, and you talked. I was just struck by how moon phase focused you are in that fishery, and you talked about the I believe it was the June spring tides, right? So
yeah,
how do you, just for the audience here, without giving away your secrets, how do you think about the moon impact on your fishery there, where you are?
It's really it really revolves around the tides for me, the gravitational pull in those tides, right? And what happens when you have a fish that have that linear blood system, like a striper or tuna or anything like that. It's like, as those tides get more intense day in and day out, like 7 days, 5 days out of the moon, they just start to move and they start to feed like crazy. And we'll have feeds, 4 or 5 days before the moon that will just go off, and it'll just be all day, just fish on top, just going nuts. And then as you get closer to the moon, like the day before, things start to cool down. And then the day of the moon, it just shuts off, usually like a light switch. And it'll be so frustrating because we're out there and it's just boomerangs, everywhere on the fish finder. And you just can't catch them. And then a couple days go by and they've just fed so hard and the tides have moved so strong and it's just kind of put them down. That's really what I've seen. I always try to plan whenever I have clients that really want to target big fish on the fly. I always try to put them in that, 3 to 6 days before the spring moons. That's really the kind of the key area.
You know what? It's so interesting. We all as guides know this. And if I have a charter and it's a client who's dying to get a fish, sometimes you just have to be brutally honest. Don't book me day before the full to a day after the full. Stay away. But then other people are like, but I always have great fishing on the full. The full moon's the best, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, let's fish the full moon. But you guys all know how it is. And we all talk about, moon phases, but, to actually hear everyone talking about it is kind of interesting.
So actually, let's take, and I'd be curious also for folks who are on, the call to enter in their chat, their own thoughts about this. But Abbie, Merritt, Tom, what are your thoughts about moon and how it impacts your fisheries? Do you agree with Gene and David? Is it really the few days leading up to and Gene, are you saying it's this? I was saying springtide. So is it new and full, or is it really the
It's
full?
it's really the full. You know, the new moon, the fishing's usually real good to the new moon, and especially if you fish at night. You know, it's always really good. But it's the full moon that really you start to really see that intensity of those feeds.
So if you could choose a period in the month, it's those 5-6 days before that full moon.
Yeah.
Those fish are, and so Abbie, Merritt, Tom, David, curious your thought. David, you gave us a little bit, but others.
Well, I was gonna say, if I was gonna book a trip, I would book a trip and have it end 2 days before the full moon. For me personally.
I agree. Sometimes our tides aren't that huge here, but when they are a full moon, they like flood the parking lot. It's actually ridiculous how like low Eggertown is. It's a little alarming. And those days, like the water's almost moving too much. Like it's harder fishing. The current is just way too crazy. So I agree. A couple days before, the rips are like they're moving, they're great. The flats are bait is moving, but it's not overpowering. I agree with you.
Merritt?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna fish a full moon, pray for cloud cover.
Yeah.
You know, right. I mean, I
Yeah.
fished for many years for tarpon. Same damn thing. You know, do not book a trip during a full moon because they feed like pigs at night, and good luck, you know, trying to feed them during the day. You know, same to some degree with stripers. Again, you know, if I had to choose between the two, certainly a new moon. If I'm flats fishing, you know, big tides, you know, moon tides, whether new or full, not a huge fan of, you know. So that's my take.
What are you finding in Gene's backyard there? You agree with Gene?
My theory is that fish use the moons to move. So it could either be the end of a really good bite or the start of another one. I think they use those tides to relocate. The one thing I'll say about the new moon is if you're a surf angler, get the waders on, get the plug bag or get the fly box and get out of there, because surf fishing in the new moon, I mean, I plan my surf trips around the new moon because that's always fish's best. And I'll stay home on the full.
Hey, Lou, I'd like to go back to something because we were talking about fish numbers, you know, and
I was going to go there.
Yeah. And, you know, it's really interesting. Merritt and I've definitely seen a huge decline in fish. And I just want to mention one thing. I think our fishery in the Hamptons was really a group of resident fish. A lot of the migrators go by or they hang out at Montauk, but they don't necessarily come into the bays like Gardner's, Peconic, Little Peconic, Noyac Bay. I think those fish would join migrations, but primarily stay around. And to that end, there's somebody who's tuned in tonight, Tim O'Rourke, who's doing a study in the Hamptons right now with a bunch of people talking about the very thing, the fact that our fish are resident fish, and we've got breeding populations in all the estuaries in the Hamptons, and those populations have really been decimated because they're really not a migrating population. They're kind of sitting ducks. So, you know, Tim, if you want to ask a question or raise your hand.
Yeah, feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah,
if you want.
We'll bring you in.
But I want to dig in on that a little bit because this is interesting to me, right? So having kind of fished back and forth between the New York Bight and out here on the East End, I hear a lot of you know, there's a lot of hand wringing out on the East End about the decline of the striped bass population. Now, you know, since the last big blitz back in 2014, we've seen a return of the fall blitzes of probably that 2015 year class sort of fish. It's been really good the last few seasons, but they're smaller fish, right? They're sort of just below the slot. I know, talking to David and Merritt and Paul and others, that, you know, the big fish that you guys used to see up in the skinny water, we're not seeing anymore. So how do we? So David, you had a theory about that, which is those were locals. I'm trying to square that with what Gene you're seeing and Tom seeing, where we're seeing really a proliferation of big fish down those areas. And then Abby, I'm just curious what you're seeing, since you grew up fishing that in terms of, and I fished a bunch up in those waters from Martha's Vineyard to Nantucket to Cape Cod and seen Monomoy, I used to fish every year and that fishery went dead for years and now it's come back. I'm just curious, trying to understand if there's a through line to what you're seeing in your different fisheries.
I'm just going to say this really quick. Tom and Gene, you guys are in like the perfect place. You're between the two biggest striper estuaries on the planet. That's all I got to say.
Jealous.
Yeah. It is great, and it is. But I have to say, I have to agree though, because the fish are declining in our areas as well too. People don't want to admit it. They don't want to realize it, and everybody will say, "Oh, they're just doing different patterns. They're hanging out offshore. They're migrating offshore." And I spend most of my life offshore, and I don't know what they're talking about because I don't see them out there. I mean, every once in a while you'll run into a school of bass out there, but it's not like miles and acres of these big fish in the fall that are all 25, 30 miles offshore. They're just not there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what do you attribute that to, Gene? Is it and obviously we're all following Amendment 7 with a lot of interest, but you talked about the revival of the bunker, but what's going on that is negatively impacting those fish in your neck of the woods?
I mean, Jersey, it's definitely just the pressure of fishing. I mean, we don't have a commercial fishery here, so it's there's nowhere you can't point your finger and blame the other side. It's recreational fishing pressure, and it's people are going out and they're catching fish and they're keeping their limit based on the law. But there's so many boats. I mean, you could go out like today. There's probably 300 boats out in Raritan Bay, and everybody's catching fish and everybody's keeping them, right? And that's been going on.
A single hook fly, they're trolling mojos around, right?
Exactly, and to each his own. Everybody's has a right to to fish and do what they want to do, and but there's very little catch and release. There's a lot of killing, and it's been going on for a really long time. Especially the really big fish, the ocean run fish. Our ocean fishery is nowhere near what it was 5 to 8 years ago. It's pretty much non-existent. But it's just the pressure every year of killing all these big giant fish.
And
that's really what's happening.
Are you seeing more boats out there, Gene, or do you think people are just getting technologically more sophisticated about targeting and catching these fish, or is it both?
I think it's both. I mean, it's the internet, right, and social media, and it's just everything is so instant now with this fishery. Whereas, growing up for me, it was always so protected, right? No one really told you where to go or what to do, and there just wasn't a lot of pressure on it. Now it's just there's tons of pressure. You could go boat to boat to boat sometimes on the weekends, and it gets gnarly,
Yeah. Abby, what are you seeing up north?
So I'm not seeing a decline in fish necessarily. There's a ton of bass around, but they're cookie cutter fish. It's the same, like I'm literally out there every single day, and to catch a 30 plus fish is like amazing at this point. They're all 22 to 29, 28, something in there. They're all 20, like around 26, 27, honestly, like the same fish again and again and again. So it's like that one class that seems to be doing well, and the breeders and the bigger fish, I don't know, I'm just not seeing as many of them. We'll see them on the flat sometimes in the fall, but it's still like for some, I don't know, I'm out there every day. You think I would see them more.
Yeah,
but
I'll throw something in on that. When I first started guiding, in 1 hour, I'd see multiple year classes.
yeah,
Multiple.
Really?
I see fish as big as 45 inches, fish as
Yeah.
little as 18. Now you're
That was
absolutely
little,
right.
the
It's
same
cookie
thing.
cutter. Yeah.
But now it's like, it's not that at all.
And
Like
fewer.
literally at all. I mean, it's shocking to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I know in the Merritt, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I mean, in the last 4 or 5 years, same thing. I mean, even the slot fish on the flats for us are very rare. It's primarily that 2018, 2019 year class of fish.
Yeah.
David, I think we spoke just the other day. You had casted to a fish that was like 40, 41, 42 inches last year on the flats.
Yeah.
But I mean, one fish out of the entire season. I mean, it's just so rare.
We used to see those all the time.
Of course, yeah, of course.
At that point, like guiding, when I see a big fish like above 30 something inches, I like freak out, and clients are like, oh, like really? And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? But it's like, it's rare now. It's just crazy. Like I'm screaming, I'm losing my mind. It's crazy.
It's so funny. We'd be out there with multiple year classes, and if somebody was throwing at a fish under 26 inches, I'd be like, hold on, there's a bigger one coming up behind it. Okay. Yeah.
David, it's funny because I remember like 20 years ago coming out to fish with Paul during the herring run.
Yeah.
And, same thing. Like, it's like 1 minute you'd catch a 25-inch bass, and then the next thing you'd have like a 25, 30 pounder on.
Yeah.
There was such a different range of fishes, and we're throwing the big flies. It was that herring run, that famous herring run at Montauk.
Oh yeah.
And and now, I don't even know if you guys have that anymore, but
Gene, we still have the herring run, but no bass on the herring.
yeah.
That's
Well,
the difference.
They're west locked onto those bunker schools. I mean, it's all about the bunker these days with those big fish,
We've seen a lot of, actually in the past few years, which we had a big lull in, have been big bluefish though, actually, which have been really fun. Because like it was like they were big, and then there was none, and then there's tons of little ones, and now there's big bluefish again. So that like helps guiding, because it was like it's all cookie cutter, but I don't know. That's
I think that's Gene, I know, and Tom, you guys fish in your waters. I remember John McMurray complaining a few years ago. This is going back 10 years probably, when that we had a precipitous decline in the peanut bunker population. And it used to be in like July, August, when the striped bass fishing slowed down, you could reliably catch bluefish everywhere, and they were just marauding those peanut bunkers. And when the peanut bunker disappeared, at least he said, and it matched my experience too, that we had a few years where you had a hard time finding a bluefish, period. And it's interesting because they have both the peanut bunker have come back, at least in out here. I know that you're getting them over west as well, but the bluefish, the summer bluefish, have really come back in numbers too.
Yeah, I mean, out by us, they're not around that much in the summer, and they're still there, but they've switched baits, so they're out on the offshore grounds, like as far as the canyons, and they're feeding on the we have massive schools of sand eels off of 20, 30, 40 fathom curve, have been there for 10, 15 years, and the population just keeps growing. But giant bluefish are out there all the time when we're tuna fishing. They're actually a nuisance when we're tuna fishing. I love them when we're fly fishing along the beach, but they become a nuisance when you
we love them.
I love them too. I just when I'm trying to get a tuna, I don't love them.
No.
So speaking of tuna, I'd love to just get a little, and where I know we're running short on time, so I want to make sure I get this in. I wanted to talk a little bit about the pelagic fishing, because clearly, the tuna have been a big story, particularly further west where you guys are, but all the way up here, right? I mean, and all the way up to where Abbie is. People are really, targeting and catching a lot of tuna, particularly the bluefin that are, closer inshore. Are we seeing an uptick in tuna these days, or is it just people have figured out how to fish for them on lighter tackle, doing what we do in these boats? What's going on? Because it feels like that's one of the big stories of light tackle fishing up and down our coast over the last 5-6 years.
I mean, I'll answer that, but it's definitely an uptick in the population there. I mean, I've every year I see more and more bluefin tuna along our coast. I've fished for them for a long time. And again, in the 80s, they were super prevalent, kind of lost them in the 90s. And then they just started coming back. And the fact that we have we had a giant tuna fishery that was, unbelievable late 80s, early 90s, and it disappeared. And now here we are the last 2 years, 2-3 miles from the beach. There's, 104-inch fish being caught on poppers, stick baits. It's insanity. And then even the midshore waters are just so prevalent out there, and the feeds are so intense every year, just more and more. I think for us, it's been the sand eels. They're just so keyed in on those sand eels, and they don't leave. They come in May and they don't leave again until like December.
And Abby, I know that, for folks in going back many years now, who wanted to target tuna on light tackle, on the surface, on fly, generally they were heading up to Massachusetts. And I'm just curious, and I know you don't fish them as much, but are people still targeting them on light tackle and on fly as much as they were in previous years, or is that less of a thing now?
I think in the last couple of years, it's gotten a lot better, and a lot towards the Cape is more where, like, all of my clients that I tuna fish with out here, or guys that do that regularly, head towards the Cape. But it's been really good actually the past 2 years. But it's far. It's kind of far from the vineyard. Like the Cape, you actually only have to go a couple miles off. But we have to go like 25 miles off from the island. Although, not that this is tuna, but 2 years ago we had mahi 3 miles off for like 10 days straight. It was so cool.
Nice.
It was so fun.
How about when you go a little east of the Hooter?
Yeah, it was right at the Hooter. It was so fun. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing fishery. I don't target tuna as much just because of my boat, but people that do go towards the Cape.
I know we're at the 9 o'clock mark. We don't have any questions in the Q&A box, but anyone who wants to ask a question, feel free to post it or just raise your hand and we can put you on the screen. I know David Tim responded to your shout out about the study, and he said he'd prefer to keep the focus on our guest tonight, but I'm certainly intrigued, so we'll follow up with Tim on all of that. And I know he's been, this has been a study I'm fascinated in as well. There's all there's a study in Lake Montauk. I'm sure Merritt and David, you know about this.
That's Tim's study.
Is that Tim's study? So
that's Tim's study, absolutely.
The results of that. So for those of you who know Lake Montauk, it's completely landlocked other than the cut, and there are holdover fish in there. So it's not like Raritan or somewhere where there are rivers that they can go up into, or even Jamaica Bay, right, where there are breeding populations that people don't normally think about. So it'd be interesting to find out more what's going on there.
Well, Lou, if Tim lets us, we'll slide the skip in there in a couple of weeks and see what we can do.
Yeah, I'd love to find out more. Tom Manalunas was saying there are more and more boats in Raritan Bay now because there are no bass out front anymore. It's the only game in town right now. Charter boats from Atlantic fishing Raritan Bay now. So I think that's consistent with what Gene and Tom were saying. Robert asked, what are the recommended flies and lines, rods to catch big fall run stripers off Barnegan Inlet? That's a good one. Gene, I bet you have an answer for that.
Yeah. So actually, believe it or not, fall has been a great time for big fish. We are seeing another run of kind of north to south migration of the adult bunkers, October and November. And so, you definitely want to be imitating bunkers. We're using big, hollow flies. There's a fly called the beast fly, which Bobby, made, and he's been playing around with for a number of years. And, it's great because, Bobby will give me flies and say, go test them out, and I'm like, yeah. But, big bunker flies, big bucktail deceivers. The key though is with those bunker schools is to get underneath them. So you want a heavy line, you want a heavier sinking line normally to get underneath the school, and you want a very slow and erratic retrieve. So got all these bunker up on top, and they get delusional, and they just fall down to the bottom, and they're just kind of flipping around. If you can imitate a fly that's just kind of like injured bunker underneath the school, that's when a lot of the big ones come. And then the other thing I'd point out is if you can try to focus around the moon. Again, I talked about the spring moons, but this holds true in October and November too, in those big bunker schools. And just get out there with a floating line, because they'll start going through those bunker schools on the surface, and really, you get some great blitzes.
And Gene, when you were talking about a sinking line, you're talking about like a 300 grain type line?
Yeah, I'm talking like more like 400 or 500.
500.
Like 500.
Deep
Yeah.
sinking lines. Gotcha.
Deeper sinking.
Yeah, Gene really wants that fly pulled down through the school and underneath that ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right, David. Yeah.
By the way, when Gene mentions Bobby, I know everyone here probably knows, but we're talking about Bob Popovics. Anyone who wants to hear Bob's story, we had an incredible episode with him a couple months back. It's on the YouTube channel, and he talks specifically about the beast fly. Peter asks, would love to catch a bluefin on a fly rod. What is the process? Is it bait and switch? Gene, why don't you take that, and then I'm sure others can answer it as well, but I know you target them a lot.
Yeah, it can be a lot of different things. We're ideally going out there and targeting one like you would false albacore during an Abbie blitz. Just like everything's magnified, faster, the fish are bigger. And so, yeah, we get them on top and we'll cast to them. Other times when I don't get them on top, we are doing two things. One is getting behind the scallop boats and literally getting right up in the wash and casting flies in the back of the boats. And then the other thing is bringing out a live peanut bunker. And that's really more, in the later summer when we get the run of yellowfins that come in here. We had yellowfins in the 80 to 120 pound class this year. And, you get them right behind the boat on the live peanut bunker, and you can throw a fly in there as well.
Cool. That's very cool. Cool. Well, I'm gonna, I think we should wrap it up. It's been a great evening. Let me maybe just ask each of you of our guests for a final word on what your sort of biggest goal is for this season on the water. What is the thing that you hope to achieve yourself personally, or with your clients this season? And Merritt, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, thanks for having me on. For sure, it was fun. Let's just hope for a real good positive outcome from Amendment 7, for God's sakes. And this season, I'm thinking more of the same. The same sort of trend like we've had the last 3 years. Obviously those 2015 fish are getting bigger, and they're obviously in that slot now. So let's either, I don't know, raise the slot so we keep that, that biomass like it is, And the other thing that really stung us, I felt last fall, was the, that warm September we had. So obviously we can't change the weather. Climate change is certainly real. Let's hope last September was an aberration, because that was a long, tough month, and just hoping. Obviously, we have a good spring and summer, but even better fall next year. We need those albies back.
Yeah, I hear you. I'll second that.
Yeah.
Abbie, what about you? Other than enjoying life as a mother or enjoying life away from motherhood on the water, what are you looking forward to this season?
I'm looking forward to figuring out the balance between the two. But also I'm just like so excited for the flats fishing. It's my absolute favorite thing. And then again, for the albies, we've had some really great albie seasons. Well, I guess last season was kind of hard, but I'm hoping that the albie season is great. Again, how it's been, but the flats really. And I think,
That's what you're
I
thinking
don't know.
about.
Flats have been good the past 2 years, so I hope the trend continues. We've had really good squid run the past years, and then forever, but then the commercial squid guys have come in and kind of decimated some of the population. So I'm hoping that we find a balance. I know they're trying to make a living, and so are we. So I hope we can find a balance between the two of that. But yeah.
Great. Gene, what about you?
First, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this. This was awesome. And so thank you. I think, two things I'm really looking forward to. One is getting more kids out on the water, teaching them how to fly fish. I really enjoy doing that. I love getting, younger kids who, maybe don't have a chance to ever do it and get them on the boat and show them how to do it. That's one. The second is I've been trying now for a long time to get one of my clients on one of these quote unquote ghosts. The ghosts are the bluefin that are along the beach in the winter, and they're very elusive. And last year we had one on, but we didn't land it. And so I'm talking about on a fly. You catch them on spin tackle, but I'd really love to be able to get one of my clients connected to one of those fish close to land.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I love that goal.
Come on down, Abby.
I know. I want to come down. That sounds amazing.
David, I'll let you back clean up here on this.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is definitely we need to get the next generation. Abby, you're kind of the next generation in a way, but getting younger people more involved, understanding the environment, the changes that are going on, they're kind of the hope for the future. I've sort of given up on my generation, unfortunately. Money's more important than a healthy environment. And for me, fishing is probably the most humbling thing there is. I mean, I think I learn something every day. I try new flies. I look at things differently. I try to, we kind of all have our way of approaching fish and approaching fishing, but sometimes it's good to try new things and see what that does. I mean, tonight I texted, well, you too, Lou, I texted everybody a fly I'm going to start using this year, because I'm just seeing the fish feeding differently sometimes. And why fish the same clouser every single day? Try, or the same thing. So, and I'm also looking forward to Amendment 7. It's so incredibly important that we all say what we need to say at the hearings. If you haven't written a letter, I don't know why people don't remember the lessons of the past. We went through this in the 70s and 80s. I remember not seeing a striped bass for like 10 years at one point. And I just don't want us to be going down that road again. It's striped bass puts a lot of metaphorical food on a lot of people's table. Hotels, delis, rod and reel manufacturers, you name it. There's primary, secondary, tertiary businesses that benefit. Montauk used to have 2 surf shops in 6 delis. With the decline of stripers, all that has gone away because all those people relied on the September, October, November, and December runs of fish that no longer exist. So my hope is Amendment 7 passing and these stocks build up, and having younger people understand what really it's supposed to be like, so they can carry that into the future. That's really how I'm looking at it.
I think that was really well said. I agree with you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you to all our guests, Abby, David, Gene, Merritt. Thanks for your expert perspectives. I know everyone really gained a lot from it. Your experience, your wisdom. Tom, thanks for everything you've done throughout this season and last. Clay, who's not on the screen now, thank you as well. And thanks to everyone who's been on tonight and on all of our shows. We'll have a great lineup for next season. Get out there and fish. Can't wait to hear from all of you about what you're catching and what you're seeing out there. And remember, we're all in this together. This isn't about being a master; it's about mastering the art of fly fishing because you're passionate about it. So we are all in that same boat together. Thanks again, everybody. It's been a great
Thank
year.
you.
Thanks to our guests.
See you next
Thank
season.
you.
Thank
you next
you
season.
so much.
Take care, everybody.
Thank
Adios. Thank you.